So, the first point of Gnosticism that we'll be covering is the idea that reality is a prison and that humanity is enslaved or imprisoned, whether it's by material reality, by the body, or by what the conspiracy movement talks about with the Matrix and the New World Order. The idea of being imprisoned on this planet is foundational to both Gnosticism as well as the conspiracy narrative, which is the modern iteration of Gnosticism.
They said the physical world is a prison created by an evil fake god. Spirit, awareness, as I would call it, is entrapped in the body. Salvation, escape from this entrapment, comes from knowledge or gnosis of self and reality. And gnosis is knowledge, yes, but it's not knowledge, names, dates, places knowledge. It's knowledge of reality and how it works, that kind of knowledge. Now, this physical world prison that they describe in their language, I call the simulation. We update it into modern language.
So he says the Gnostics taught that the physical world is a prison, nearly identical to what the History of Christian Theology lecture notes said about Gnosticism, that the physical world is an evil prison for our spirits. And here, Ike is affirming the legitimacy of the Gnostics' writings, saying that the Gnostics were essentially describing the Matrix prison that humanity is enslaved by today, and is portrayed in the movie The Matrix. At the end, he links it with The Matrix. You can see the green raincoat from the movie, calling our world the simulation, one and the same as the prison that the Gnostics talked about. And if you remember in the film, The Matrix is a giant computer simulation. So that's where Ike is getting the term simulation. And we'll return to this presentation in a little bit, but it's important to understand that he uses Gnosticism as a setup to help explain who and what is behind the New World Order. In other words, he's saying that the Gnostics were trying to expose the very same forces that he and others have been exposing for decades as conspiracy researchers. So Gnosticism has become foundational to David Icke's exposés on the New World Order, one of many examples that demonstrate the Gnostic spirit behind the entire anti-New World Order conspiracy movement. Now, here's some more clips of David Icke talking about humanity's imprisonment and enslavement by the Illuminati to further show how it's the focal point of David Icke's entire worldview, just as it was for the ancient Gnostics. I'm just going to let these play, and as you'll see later, this same theme is parroted throughout the entire conspiracy movement. This is by no means exclusive to David Icke.
Now, this is the greatest form of imprisonment. It's what I call the prison without the bars. The greatest form of dictatorship is the hidden hand, which gives you the illusion of freedom while fundamentally controlling your lives, because people do not rebel against not being free when they believe they are. So like I say, what happened was when the colonial powers apparently pulled out of North America, pulled out of Africa, pulled out of Asia and Australia, and all these other countries, they left behind their secret society network and the bloodlines that they're so obsessed with, and they have gone on controlling those countries ever since, while the people of those countries have believed they were free. The prison without the bars.
During this period of known human history, there has been this war, really, on human perception, and to hold people in a perceptual prison called the simulation. And what's been happening is we've been manipulated as a human society to build our own technological prison.
The greatest prison that people live in is the fear of what other people think. What happened to me as a result of all the ridicule I went through is that I stepped out of the fear of what other people thought. And it's only when you do it that you realize what a prison you lived in before. What the Illuminati have created is a whole human population of prison warders who are jumping on those that are stepping out of the norm. Are we going to become recorders of our own enslavement? If we do that, we've moved from not knowing that the prison's being built around us
to seeing the prison being built around us. But there's a common theme between the two of them. The prison's being built around us.
There is a multi-level conspiracy, a multi-dimensional conspiracy to enslave humanity in a fake reality.
Next, Alex Jones, one of the foremost conspiracy theorists of our day. Jones likewise has the theme of imprisonment weaved all throughout his work. For example, in addition to his main InfoWars site, he has a website called Prison Planet TV. He also has a book and documentary called 9/11: Descent into Tyranny, the New World Order's dark plans to turn Earth into a prison planet, and another documentary called In-Game Blueprint for Global Enslavement. So he's promoting the Gnostic teaching that our world is a prison. It's already a prison to some degree, and the elites are trying to make it even more into a prison. And here's an old screenshot from his InfoWars site. This is from 2014, an article called How to Unplug from the Matrix, with a picture of Jones as Morpheus from the Matrix. And the subheading says, How to Break Through the Manufactured Illusion Constructed All Around Us. So there again, the recurring theme of illusion that we talked about in the last video. Everything is an illusion, everything's a lie, it's all fake. That's the heart of the Matrix narrative, because the Matrix is fake. And if you're saying that everything is an illusion or everything's a lie and it's all fake, what you're doing is calling out the Matrix, even without using the term. And Alex Jones is a white magician helping to shatter this great illusion, as Alice Bailey called the disciples of the New Age to do. So just like the ancient Gnostics, Jones is telling us that we are imprisoned by the Matrix, and how we can break free of it. And along those lines, here's a couple snippets from an InfoWars segment from years ago called We're Entering the Matrix in 2015, where he brings up the theme of enslavement.
There's 7.5 billion of us. We can change the future. We can rally humanity and build a technological system to take us to the stars and empower us, not to enslave us and make us obsolete as the elite merge with the machines. I'm honored to have him host the nightly news with our other reporters and myself, 7 o'clock weeknights at prisonplanet.tv. All I know is I'm not a slave. I'm awake. I've got a soul.
And a number of years ago, Alan Watt did an interview for Alex Jones's Prison Planet TV, and he too makes several references to mankind being slaves of the elites and their matrix. Listen.
The message you're getting is that you're utterly helpless to defend, help, or save yourself. That is complete shock and awe tactic that's been used not only in the US and Canada, but across the world. Same strategy, because we're already global with a global society running us all. The leaders are presented to us on screen with uniforms or business suits and ties as politicians who speak with confidence, all scripted of course, and they seem to have everything under control. You're now basically a fearful slave looking up to the powerful master to defend and protect you. But he says we're now in the process of creating a more sophisticated form of slavery. In other words, the general public who would drift into the system and it would become natural for them would never twig on that we're actually slaves.
Next, David Wilcock. In addition to being a conspiracy researcher, he's also a very big New Ager with a bunch of programs on Gaia TV. And despite his many quirks and strange proclivities, he, like Alex Jones, has been very ahead of the curve on the exposure of elite pedophilia, going back over 12 years. And we'll look at that a bit later. His website is divinecosmos.com, and in an article on his website called The Ascension Mysteries Have Been Solved, he says this: the real world is so much different than the lies we have been fed all of our lives that it is hard to tell the difference. So there again is a reference to the lies of the elites that make up the Matrix illusion that we need to wake up to, which Truth Unedited also mentioned as well. He said there's people trapped inside the fake world of the Matrix, and then the ones in the real world are the ones awakened to all the lies and programming. Then he says the negative forces who have run the Western world and tried to dominate the entire planet but are now being defeated, aka the Cabal, call this Plato's Cave. Plato's Cave would be another version of the Matrix. They have kept us in a prison of the mind all of our lives.
A prison for your mind.
So there he's taking Morpheus's words from the Matrix almost verbatim. A prison for your mind. which is constructed through the lies of those who supposedly control the world. That's why the false light is so obsessed with exposing the lies of the elites, because the lies are what build the prison of the mind. Humanity is imprisoned by lies, by this fake, illusory world. So Plato's cave is an ancient metaphor for waking up to the illusion or to the matrix, where you realize that it's all fake and that you've been a prisoner inside a dark, confined space that's cut off from the real world, which is what David Wilcock said on his website, where he said that the real world is so much different than the lies we've been fed. And then he went on to mention Plato's cave. And so based on that, you can imagine that Plato's cave would be a popular concept in the conspiracy movement, because it's the original idea of being set free from the bondage or slavery of the matrix illusion. And indeed it is. Here's David Icke, Russell Brand, and Alex Jones all referring to the allegory of the cave.
Plato talked about the illusion of the world being shadows on the walls of a cave, which people took to be real, when it was just a projection of something else. All that time ago, spot on.
And humanity's coming out of the cave.
We're coming out of the cave. It's over. We're coming out of the caves now. We're going to be on the plains. It's going to be a crazy time. Libertarian revolution.
Because vampires, parasites, roaches don't like the sun. I love the sun. And we're going to drag them kicking and screaming out at high noon out of their crypts. And we don't have to do anything to them. We just have to spiritually drag the enemy out in the open square, and they will burst into flames. The allegory is so true. They will burn. They will turn to dust in front of our eyes the minute we recognize the light.
I find Jones's reference there to dragging them out of their crypts into the light of the sun and turning them to dust to be especially eerie, because I see that as a reference to Revelation 17:16, where the horns of the beast destroy the harlot and burn her with fire. And elsewhere in this clip, he does talk about going into battle and defeating the enemy. Also, Alexandra briefly mentioned a cave in 5 phases of deprogramming.
The second you wake up, you become a target. Imagine you're in a cave, and waking up from the Matrix is like waking up the dragon. Lucifer has worked endlessly with his legions of fallen angels and Nephilim to keep you from ever discovering he's the one behind all this.
So she likens waking up from the Matrix to coming out of a cave, essentially making Satan the one who is creating the shadows on the wall that keep people stuck in the Matrix illusion. It's not an explicit reference to Plato's allegory of the cave, but the same basic idea is there. And considering the whole Matrix imprisonment theme of her channel, I think the implication is pretty obvious. Now, continuing with the theme of imprisonment, YouTuber Elizabeth April mentioned the idea of the prison planet in her interview with Tim Ray on Frequency Wars. Listen.
Then you start to wake up and you start to realize the main agenda that's taking place here on this planet, whatever you want to call it, New World Order, Illuminati, Cabal, it doesn't matter. There's a shadow government that's going on behind the scenes. There's another agenda above that, which is the Galactic Federation agenda, right? Who is here to help us raise our consciousness, to liberate us from this so-called prison planet. And we are eradicating that darkness. And that's why we're seeing the collapse. That's why we're seeing the purging. That's why we're seeing, just the exposure that's happening right now at this time.
Right, so the New World Order prison planet. And she said that a sign that humanity is starting to break out of this prison planet is all the exposure that's happening. The unveiling of the New World Order. You can't break out of a prison that you don't know you're in. And so the false light is waking people up to this prison so that they can break out of it. And that's what's building right now. A global prison break against Mystery Babylon, the residents of the so-called prison wardens, which is why Alexandra talks about coming out of Babylon. And as prison breaks are often violent, so this one will be very, very violent on a massive scale.
Come out of the lies, to spiritually come out of Mystery Babylon.
Next, this is Michael Salla, another one that I've referenced throughout this series. He's a New Age author who's written books on the Galactic Federation and runs a website called Exopolitics. And here's a video on Michael Salla's YouTube channel which has over 160,000 subscribers, by the way, called Trump Fires Kissinger, Prison Planet Has Change in Management. He talks about Earth as a prison planet under the control of Illuminati families and organizations like the Rockefellers and the Bilderberg Group, and ultimately reptilian ETs, which are typically the main bad guys in the Gnostic conspiracy narrative. Listen.
And Kissinger was a right-hand man to the Rockefeller family, especially to Nelson Rockefeller, and worked directly under Nelson Rockefeller in the Eisenhower administration. And what was really significant here about Kissinger was that at some point he began to be a liaison with extraterrestrial civilizations themselves directly. And later on, we know that he has been seen at various meetings where reptilians are involved. These are extraterrestrials who are said to be at the top tier of running the planet. That Earth is in fact a prison planet. Earth is in fact a prison planet.
So-called prison planet.
7 o'clock weeknights at prisonplanet.tv.
That the elites are kind of like prison guards and that they take their marching orders from these reptilian extraterrestrials called the Draco.
Those families and organizations take all of their orders straight from the fallen.
I first came across this from people that were reporting about the meetings at the Bilderberg Group that Henry Kissinger often attends as a member of the executive committee. Patriots are being put in positions of authority, and that for the first time in who knows how long, centuries, millennia, there's a real chance that Earth may break free of being a prison planet run by these extraterrestrial entities working through these elites placed in prominent positions such as the Bilderberg Group.
Next, Simon Parkes. He's a New Ager who claims to have had intimate contact with ETs. And like many New Agers, he believes that Gnosticism is the true form of Christianity, that the Gnostic Gospels present the authentic account of Christ's life and teachings, and that Christ himself was a Gnostic. And in that Gnostic spirit, Parkes describes humans as prisoners and slaves of the Illuminati and the reptilians. Watch.
And the reptilian agenda is very much the strong will survive. And this is the element that the Illuminati have. If you are the fit, you will survive. It's what Hitler was about. And you will find that any Illuminati person will have rhesus in his or her bloodline, because that is the key link that goes back thousands of years and goes back to the time when humans were genetically altered to make the creatures that we have now. The jailers don't want the prisoners becoming greater than them. And that's what this game is all about. It's literally whether humans will survive and develop and be what we always should have been, or whether we're destined to stay exactly as we are now. But humans are still prisoners, And we fool ourselves that we've gone on from the horse to the motor car and all the rest of it, but actually we're still trapped. So this whole battle that's been fought above the earth and on the earth and under the earth and energetically through the minds of people, are literally to break enslavement, because humans are enslaved. But the system has been going so long and is so clever that the vast majority of people don't understand what they are and how they're being trapped and how they're being tricked and how they're being lied to.
We have been lied to by the establishment for generations. This web of lies is massive.
I realized that everything I had learned up until that point was a big lie.
The organized lie is very powerful.
Will you please look at the evidence and how they've lied to you and all the bad things they've done?
Because y'all been lied to.
So it's like there's your prophets of Baal, and they are speaking constantly lies.
And then there is the real world of people that are awakened from all the lies and programming.
So we're trapped, we're enslaved, we're imprisoned, we're lied to, we're manipulated. Same terminology over and over. These are the motifs of the Great Awakening deception. J.P. Sears of Awaken with J.P. has also used this Gnostic terminology of imprisonment. In the clip I showed in the last video where he was talking about making George Orwell's 1984 fiction again, he referred to our world as a jail.
It's helpful to recognize how 1984 is playing out in our world today. It's been said that you can't get out of a jail you don't know you're in. But once you know you're in a jail, you can recognize it, and then you can do something to get out of it. And in this case, it's more like you can't get out of Orwell's 1984 horror film until you know you're in it. So let's take a look at how we're in it so we can get out of it.
So let's take a look at how we're in it so that we can awaken to it. We need to break out of Orwell's nightmare, just like we need to break free of the Matrix. And speaking of that, the narrator of the Gaia show Breaking Free of the Matrix, Regina Meredith, also called the Matrix a prison.
Recognizing that we all live in the Matrix is the first step in breaking free of it. All of humanity can be set free from this prison by embracing and expanding our infinite awareness.
Ralph Smart of Infinite Waters has also done the same, talking about his former enslavement in the Matrix prior to his awakening.
I had my massive awakening moment in 2006. Had to realize that, oh my gosh, I didn't come here just to be a slave. I came here to be free.
Nick Good also conveyed this concept of imprisonment when he said that humanity is trapped or stuck in a web of low vibrational matrix.
Consciousness is in danger of being trapped, enmeshed in a sticky web of a low vibrational matrix. And millions and millions and millions and millions of souls are stuck in that web right now. And it is absolutely horrible.
And then probably Alexandra, as part of her overall Matrix narrative, also emphasizes how much people are imprisoned and enslaved by Satan's Matrix, which explains the emphasis on mind control within the New Age truther narrative. It's all part of this prison of the mind, as New Ager David Wilcox says, not to mention Morpheus from the Matrix. As I've said before, she has a series called Programmed. Part 5 of that series is called Chainless Slaves, and Part 6 is called Invisible Chains. So she too heavily emphasizes this Gnostic concept of slavery and imprisonment, because she's a Gnostic disguising herself as a Christian. Listen.
So what do you get when you combine the elements of occult and covert mind control experimentation? An undetectable underworld of chainless slaves. Allegedly, the CIA has also been labeling their mind-controlled slaves by the following. Delta series are models for espionage as well as assassination. Kilo 5 series is military espionage. Michael 1 series slaves are CIA agents under total mind control. And Juliet 7 series sex slaves for espionage. It has become increasingly difficult to free ourselves from the order, as it is constantly trying to mold us into the slaves it wants. Into the slaves it wants.
You are a slave, Neo.
So you can see and hear all these references that she makes to this global cult, which would be the Babylonian cult that the entire false light movement is beginning to rise up against, creating a population of slaves, which is the exact same narrative of the likes of David Icke, Alex Jones, and the rest of the Gnostic conspiracy movement. And the false light is rising up to set the captives free, so to speak, as part of a false Christ movement, which will officially get underway with the first seal, the white horse of Revelation 6, which goes out to conquer, as somewhat of a precursor to the Antichrist. And as you'll see, this blog entry also talks about humanity's imminent release from our prison planet through this great storm of disclosure and all these secret things coming to light, just as Q would later go on to say as well. So it says here, many wonder how on earth things are going to change so quickly after the event. Here I am referring to the practicalities of worldwide peace on earth, worldwide prosperity, worldwide free energy, etc. When the veil is finally down, there's the reference to the veil, soldiers everywhere will lay down their weapons and refuse to kill others. When people finally learn through the mass media that they have been imprisoned and held hostage by warmongers for so long, that the entire financial system, etc., has been designed to be a source of income for our captors and keep us as slaves, the relief among people will know no bounds. So there's that Gnostic motif of imprisonment by the globalist captors. And remember, this is 2015. And then 2 years later, Q and the QAnon movement would go on to talk about some of these same things. And Bailey, too, heavily emphasized the Gnostic idea of humanity's imprisonment by dark entities and their human proxies who were using black magic to subdue the planet under illusion and carry out their agenda of world domination and control, which is essentially the heart of the conspiracy narrative. And that's why I've dubbed Alice Bailey the mother of conspiracy theory in addition to the New Age movement. And later we'll look more in depth at her conspiracy views and how she linked it all to the Jews and Zionists, just as the conspiracy movement does. Now, just to get a glimpse of how much the theme of imprisonment pervaded her writings, in her book, A Treatise on White Magic, the word prison and its variants are found on 25 out of 297 pages of this PDF copy of the book. So almost 10% of its pages mention mankind's imprisonment. So that would make it qualify as a pretty prominent theme in her writings. And here's just a few of the many examples. As you can see, she was deeply captivated by this idea of humanity's imprisonment. Here she says that matter holds all souls in prison, just like the Gnostics believing that the physical world is a prison, and that an integral part of developing a connection with the higher self and becoming a New Age disciple was realizing the extent of your imprisonment. Now, this is very important because this is exactly how the modern conspiracy movement defines awakening, by realizing the extent of our imprisonment by the globalists. The false light awakening hinges on you waking up to how enslaved you are. And here we have that exact definition of awakening in the writings of Alice Bailey. And this is why so many people today, both Christians and New Agers alike, will talk about their spiritual awakening coinciding with their realization of the New World Order or the Matrix. They're recognizing the extent of their imprisonment, as Alice Bailey said. Ralph Smart of Infinite Waters said as much, that he had a massive awakening after realizing that everything was a lie. He saw the prison or matrix that he was in, created by the mainstream media and education and all that. Same with Alexandra, who's trying to get people to wake up to how enslaved they are by the Freemason satanic matrix. Or Nick Good, who said that people are awakening to the fact that they're victims of a control system. And Truth Unedited likewise said that realizing he was a victim of the New World Order's mind control was very important in his awakening, and so on and so on. And this is why David Icke in his presentations, or Alex Jones, or New Age documentaries like Plandemic and many others, they always start off with focusing on the conspiracies themselves, because, as Alice Bailey said, the process of awakening begins with the person realizing the extent of their imprisonment. And that's exactly what all these people are trying to do. They're trying to get people to wake up to how imprisoned they are, because that will lead to their awakening. You can't escape the matrix if you don't know you're in it, right? So you got to show people the matrix first, then feed them the teachings that supposedly get them out of it. This is what Morpheus did with Neo. In his very first encounter with him, he told him that he was a slave and a prisoner of the matrix, and then showed him the way to get out of it. So that wraps up the first point of Gnosticism, that the world is an evil prison for our spirits, which expresses itself today in the conspiracy narrative through the idea that the Illuminati and the New World Order have created a prison planet that entraps and enslaves mankind.
You are a slave, Neo, born into a prison that you cannot smell or taste or touch.
They said the physical world is a prison created by an evil fake god.
It's what I call the prison without the bars.
Consciousness is in danger of being trapped.
We're still trapped.
In a perceptual prison.
Whatever you want to call it, New World Order, Illuminati, Cabal, this so-called prison planet.
7 o'clock weeknights at prisonplanet.tv.
Earth is in fact a prison planet, that the elites are kind of like prison guards.
To enslave humanity in a fake reality.
And have a giant submass of uneducated slaves.
An undetectable underworld of chainless slaves.
And a tiny elite in control of it all.
You become a slave. You become a serf to these people.
As it is constantly trying to mold us into the slaves it wants.
Humans are still prisoners because humans are enslaved.
We're slaves, and it's getting worse.
You're now basically a fearful slave looking up to the powerful master.
And that is the very nature of this New World Order system. It's basically just slavery.
All I know is I'm not a slave. I'm awake. I've got a soul.
Oh my gosh, I didn't come here just to be a slave. I came here to be free.
Not to be a slave and a sheep to you and these people.
There's a real chance that Earth may break free of being a prison planet.
So let's take a look at how we're in it so we can get out of it.
All of humanity can be set free from this prison by embracing and expanding our infinite awareness.